Elliot Hardy and Michael Ford are coming. Ellen Wilkinson, the red flag, she is humming. We get around not as much as Dominic Cummings, even though he's driving blind. We are the Labour grassroots, where like-minded folk dwell. From countryside to city, it's warm and it's witty, the antidote to Priti Patel. We are the Labour grassroots, time to raise a racket. The future is as bright as Crispin's red jacket. This is the space where we all go hell for leather, free from all the biased BBC blether. Like track and trace, we're better together, just as Carrie and Meg. Yeah, we got all the people from Inverness, Skegness, Barrow and Furness, Chester, Leicester, Cirencester, Shrewsbury, Oswald Street, Swansea, Llanelli, Barnsley, Beccles, Nottingham and Eccles. We are the Labour grassroots, time to plant some grass, where we've always had social distancing between us and the upper class.
Welcome to the Not the Andrew Marr show. Thank you all for coming on. I know you all want to stay in bed and eat turkey or whatever it is you do, but there's this thing called Brexit that they're trying to sneak through during the week between Christmas and New Year, and Boris Johnson's got this deal that he's come back with. He said it's done, so we're going to talk about that this morning. But before that, we've got John Dunn doing a newspaper review. Are you there, John?
I am indeed, yes.
You're eager to go.
As eager as I'll ever be at my age.
And we've got Pamela Fitzpatrick in Harrow. How are you, Pamela?
I'm good, thank you, Crispin, in this very strange Christmas that we've got for everybody. But
yeah, it is. It's like they don't really want anyone to have a normal year. It's sort of like
they've succeeded on that, haven't they? You know, whoever thought that we wouldn't be talking about Brexit for most of the year, that we'd be talking about something else.
Get it at the end, getting it back to Brexit. Now, what I thought we won't talk about the Brexit issue in the newspaper review. We'll save that for later. But we will speak about some of the other stories in the papers, which are mostly to do with this variant of COVID-19. John, do you think that this is something that merits more lockdown, or do you think we should just continue with the same thing? Because if we were all already worried about COVID, so I don't know why a new variant should make it more concerning. What do you think?
Well, I think we have to go back to the start of this. If we'd had a proper lockdown then, if this had been dealt with properly, we'd probably be clear of it now. We're an island, you know. If anybody could have escaped a widespread pandemic, it should have been us. But what they've done, and I think quite purposely, is that, you know, they've let the virus run, as you know. Obviously they had the herd immunity strategy right from the start, and I don't think they've ever moved from that. And now we've got the scare tactics over the mutant variant of COVID. But you know, all viruses mutate, but they have to have the facilities in which to mutate, and that's crowds. And the fact that it's spreading amongst kids means that, you know, the schools are a melting pot for all this. And if you'd got a government that were hell-bent on killing a lot of its citizens, then you've got one now. You know, every pensioner that dies is a saving to these people, and more money to give in tax refunds to the rich and their friends. And I just, you know, my partner's son, he lives in China, he's teaching over there, and he's absolutely made me sick this holiday, sending videos of them living normally because they've effectively suppressed it. And yeah, we've got to have a national lockdown, and it's got to be a proper one. It's not, you know, people must go to work if they can't work from home. Schools we've got to have a lockdown. It's the only way that will eliminate this in any space of time. But I go back to what I've said. If at the start of this, in February, March, we dealt with it properly, if we'd had a proper lockdown, but they were more concerned about profits. And when they talk about the economy, that's what they mean, protecting their profits.
Right. So what do you think, Pamela? Do you think we should have a national lockdown?
Well, similar to John, really. Every time, I have to say, I've largely stopped reading the newspapers since the election. The only time I do is when Crispin asked me to review the papers, because there's so little within the mainstream media. The government tries to, and the media to some extent, try to blame individuals for the state that we're in, whereas it is the government's responsibility, it is their fault. And you wouldn't know that they have mishandled the situation as badly as they have by reading the mainstream media. But there's an article, I don't know if any of you read like Labour Hub or any of the other kind of alternative press that come out. And there's a good article by Labour Hub that's just come out that refers to a cross-party report which highlights just how badly the government have handled the pandemic. It's damning on every level, but what it's also damning of is the lack of scrutiny by mainstream media, but also of the opposition. So it's largely allowed the government to go unchallenged on this. So yes, of course, if there's a new variant, if people are at risk, there has to be a major lockdown. We have to get to grips with it. But this should have been happening back in March. We're nearly a year on and we're no better off. I think, like lots of us, we moved to working from home back in March, those of us who could. And I thought it would be a matter of months. I never believed Christmas time we'd still be here with no further forward. And hopefully, yes, we're getting the vaccine now, but you know.
Well, I'll just bring that issue in, because there's this story in the Sunday Mirror that the vaccine is just not getting out there. So that's probably going to be another problem that we face. Yeah, it doesn't look good. This is going on for much longer than it could have gone on for. And I mean, the other issue that we've just seen recently is this lorry drivers. 10,000 lorry drivers can't get out of the country. What's your view on that? Do you think that the government has no respect for these? I mean, there's been nothing done to support these lorry drivers. You hear about people locally sending in curries, which I would imagine actually is probably the worst thing you can do when there's no sanitation and no toilets around. But what do you think about the way the government's treated these lorry drivers, John?
Well, it's no different in actuality of the way they treat working people anyway. That you know, contempt, and yeah, it's no coincidence that these lorry drivers were locked away on the M20 or wherever at the time that Boris was securing his oven-ready, microwave-friendly Brexit deal. I mean, it's no great fun being a lorry driver anyway, but imagine being stuck in a queue of thousands and thousands.
John, you seem to have a bad signal.
Could have been a food drop to these people, but on the other side, it's been tremendous to see the solidarity that local people have shown by taking food and actually feeding and helping these people. And Christmas or not, it's an absolute tragedy that these people became hostages, either hostages to rampant profits and the Tories not caring anything about ordinary people, or hostages as part of these so-called negotiations over Brexit. And whatever happens, let's never forget, the Tories and their friends are going to come out on top. And, you know, lorry drivers, people like myself, industrial workers, we're just collateral damage in this battle between capital and Labour. And I just hope that these people get home as soon as possible. And who could blame them if they never want to get on a ferry and cross over into Britain again?
Yeah. Right. Well, I'm going to finish the discussion. This rather short newspaper review. By the way, the Morning Star had no issue edition that I could find in the shop, but I thought this was an interesting story ish in the Observer. It's about the 5G conspiracy. The Lib Dems in Bath are going along with the idea of stopping the 5G mast going up there. What's your view on the 5G issue, Pamela? Do you think there should be more investigation if it's safe, or do you think it is just a conspiracy?
I don't know, honestly, Crispin. What I'd say from the article, it's a bit rich of Nick Cowan sneering at everybody, and because what all of these articles show really is that there's such a lack of trust both in politicians and journalists. So really, what do they expect? People have been locked up in their homes for nearly a year. They don't trust politicians, they don't trust the media. So of course, people are going to start to imagine all sorts of things because you're not getting accurate information. So I don't know, I'm not a scientist, I don't know if there's anything in it. I don't tend to believe anything that Nick Cowan says, definitely. I'd rather stick to sort of alternative media sources, but it seems a bit irresponsible of the Lib Dems. But when have the Lib Dems ever been responsible people, really? And they'll chase a vote for anything, won't they? So it's not surprising, but
right, yeah, it's true. There is this kind of distrust of everyone, government, media, everything. So these conspiracies have a lot of fertile ground, really, at the moment. Thank you, Pamela, and thank you, John. I might bring you back in to talk about Brexit. I'm sure you'd love to. But what I thought as an intro, I just thought I'd read out what it says about. We're going to talk about Brexit now. We've got people from different sides in the referendum who will be on the call. We've got people who are going to vote in Parliament on this deal. We've got trade union leaders. Council leader, and this is what we've got. Downing Street's chief Brexit negotiator, Lord Frost, said the deal would allow the UK to set its own laws again. He later said this should be the beginning of a moment of national renewal for us. So Brexit's done, apparently, and we have a moment of national renewal. Now, I wanted to speak to start with. I thought I'd speak to Brendan in Kent, who was the leader of who was the head of Labour Leave, to see what do you think about the deal, Brendan?
Good morning, Crispin, and good morning to everyone on the call. I'm still wading through the thousands of pages. I'm about just over a third of the way through the document. And so far, it seems to be what the British people voted for, namely to leave the European Union and to have as good a trade deal with the European Union as possible. Of course, I've got to get through the rest of the document yet. It is a very complex document with many, many cross-references. But it seems to me to be quite a satisfactory arrangement so far. The one area where I think needs to be improved is obviously in fishing. For the next 5 years, there is a sort of extra transitional arrangement in the treaty for EU fishermen to still have access to British waters. Now, I'd like to see Labour championing those sorts of jobs and the revival of that industry in this country. We represent many coastal seats. or used to until 2019. And I hope to see us take those seats back again and restore those fishing industries in those communities, because it's not just about the fishermen that go out and catch the fish. It's about the preparing industry, the transport industries associated with it, as well as the gutting, the environmental standards, etc. All of those things associated with it generate jobs in the locality and also create a sense of worth and pride in local communities. The area that I think we need to also be, certainly our MPs need to be asking questions on this week, is the dispute mechanism system that's in the treaty, because from what I've read so far, it seems to me to be only the Commission that can trigger a dispute resolution panel. And so I hope our MPs on the call will be able to ask about how the British government, this current government and the future Labour government could trigger that process as well. So sorry I haven't been able to read the whole document in preparation for today, but I'm wading through it.
That's understandable. I don't think anyone's been able to read it, not even people who've been up all night on kind of medication. But what I'd like to know is, do you think Labour should vote for this deal on Wednesday? Then do you think that Keir Starmer should whip the MPs to support it?
I do, yes. I think we need to draw a line under this whole Brexit argument, and one way of doing that is to vote the deal through. Now, Sir Keir Starmer has said he's going to whip Labour MPs to vote for this deal. I think that's the right decision. We need to demonstrate that we have listened to what happened last year. There were two big issues in the last general election that kept coming up on the doorstep. That was Brexit and the leadership of the party. There's no escaping that. Any canvasser that went out, that was what we were told. So we need to vote for this deal. We need to show that we have accepted the outcome of the referendum. Of course, we went into the last general election seeking to overturn it, and look where that got us. We suffered one of our worst defeats in living memory. And so
can I just butt in a little bit? Because do you find it strange that Keir Starmer, who was leading the call to have a referendum, is now calling for us to support the deal?
Well, it's a road to Damascus conversion, and a very satisfactory one. So, I mean, obviously at the time, Sir Keir Starmer was one of the champions of the second referendum and trying to take us back in. But I think now he's leader of the Labour Party. He can see the writing on the wall. If he wants to win back Bolsover, if he wants to win back Grimsby, or down where I am in Kent, if he wants to have a chance at taking seats like Dover and Chatham and Thanet, and then back up again in the northeast, all those seats we lost there, those areas voted to leave. And if we're going to continue fighting the last war and making the arguments of the last election, we will not win again. So yes, it's a transition, his own transition in a sense. I imagine he's probably not very comfortable with it, because if the boot had been on the other foot and I was a leaver that had to now support a Remain position, I wouldn't obviously feel comfortable with it, but I know in order to win, that's what I've got to do. And we all know a Labour government is always better than a Conservative government. And if it means some people at the top of the party have got to change their views in order to win, to deliver that Labour government, I think that's entirely appropriate.
Okay, well, look, thank you very much for coming on the show. I'm pleased that you're happy with the deal. I'm not sure everyone else will be on this call.
I think I'm probably the only person on the call, I imagine. But that's what democracy is about.
Yeah, that's what I agree. Thank you for coming on. It's good to hear from you. Thank you, Brendan. I'm going to bring in Tosh, who was also rather keen on deal being on Brexit. I think you were opposed to the referendum. Are you there, Tosh?
Yeah, I'm there, Tristan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I am here. I am here. But what's your view now on Brexit, on the deal? Do you think the deal's a good deal? Do you think it's the right thing to back it in the parliamentary vote?
Well, I don't think whatever Starmer does is going to come out well on this, is he? I mean, we lost the red wall, if you like, the places where I live up in the northeast and Yorkshire. We lost them because of Starmer's actions on the second referendum stuff. Because once we changed and made a compromise at conference, almost straight away after it, he stood up and said, and this is a guy who was going to be negotiating a Labour deal to leave. stood up and said, and then I'll vote against it. So we were in a no-win situation. And I think now he's going to whip the Labour MPs to support the deal to leave. My personal view is that's probably right. But as I said last time we spoke, he should sit on fence getting splinters in his arse like he has done all along, to choose this issue, to come off the fence, and then come out and he's been saying quite openly, this is just the start, we're going to improve the deal. Well, I'm not mixing in working men's clubs and stuff in Yorkshire with people at the minute, but I do speak to people still, and I'm not talking people like me who are into politics, just the people, everyday person on the street, and they're saying they didn't trust him. They didn't trust him because of the Brexit thing. That's why there was such a difference between 2017 and 2019 election results here. And they don't trust him now. And the first thing people are saying to me is, but look, if he gets elected, he's going to change it. So he's still trying to get us out of there. But I think you've got to remember with Starmer, he's somebody you just can't trust. He's the only British MP who's a member of the Trilateral Commission, which is America, Japan and Europe. He's the only British MP a member of that. It sprung up in the 60s against the civil rights movements, democracy movements, because they believe there's too much democracy. Yeah. Now, he's showing he doesn't like democracy in Labour Party, and I don't believe he likes it in the country. He's opposed the referendum result, and you come and spoke to us in Doncaster to meet the Brexiteers thing. Yeah. We weren't bothered whether it was a deal or no deal, because at the end of the day, the EU has not been good for workers' rights, despite all the stuff that's pushed. But now we only have to change one government, not 27 governments, to try it. To once we get a decent socialist government in place, that won't be under Starmer. I think Starmer's allies, who loved him for getting us through and supporting the second referendum vote, they're going to turn on him now. He won't have the left supporting him. The hard right's not going to support him, and I think it's his own making. And the best thing that happens is this brings him down, and we have a leadership election and get a leader who the whole of the party can unite behind.
Okay, well, let me get before I kind of wanted. You've got a Corbyn mug there. I just wanted to ask you about the deal, though. I mean, this deal that he's got, it's not really the deal that you would have wanted, is it?
It's not the deal I would have wanted. I would have wanted a deal that a Labour government could have negotiated, a good deal that would have suited everybody, and we could have just gone smoothly into it. That hasn't happened. But as I said to you, when you come to Doncaster, Crispin, no deal would be better than staying in. No deal would be better, because we only have to then change one government. You've got to understand that the EU look what the EU did to Romania in the 2008 crash. They just joined the EU. They were in the mire. They went to the EU looking for support. They got the support, quite substantial support from the EU. And the thing they had to do to pay it back was a 40% cut in public sector workers' wages. And the EU has done that throughout Europe. It's about grinding people's wages down, their freedom and their liberty, and this big monstrosity then overrules. It pretends it's giving you workers' rights, but you can get better. A good Labour government with a good organised trade union movement, free collective bargaining, will do better than some monolith of the EU can do. So it might not be the deal, but the main thing is we're honouring the referendum result to get out. And I tell you what, if you come up to places like South Yorkshire and look around, we had big signs up saying project funded by the European Union. There were literally roads to nowhere that they built with European money. All the streets, all the high streets had no shops. They were all shutting down. The factories, the pits, all gone. But we're getting roads to nowhere built by EU money. People were fed up. It was a kick out against the establishment. Starmer lost us that election, and now he's going to lose his EU supporting colleagues within the parliamentary party. And I'll be glad to see it. Maybe we can get a new leader and get a party we can unite behind before there's another election.
Okay. Thank you, Tosh. I think.
By the way, sorry I was a bit late logging on. That's what happened when Man United play early match. I start drinking too early and it takes some getting up in the morning. So I apologise for that. And the late equaliser was shocking.
Yeah, no, I saw that. Yeah. Well, at least you got some goals, unlike Fulham. Okay, so I'm going to move on to Matt Wrack. You there, Matt?
Morning, Crispin. Morning, everyone. Hi.
Morning, Matt. Now, what's your view on the deal and how it affects working conditions and law on employment, and also on whether you think Labour should support it. Do you think Labour should support the deal?
Well, I think I'm going to take issue with both your previous speakers here. And I have to say, I think unless you approach this with some sort of class analysis, you're going to end up making mistake after mistake. And I think that's happened on all sides throughout this debate. The EU is no friend of workers, but I think the mistake people have made is to think that the British state is some sort of ally of workers. The British state is a long-established capitalist regime and is very experienced at controlling us. The idea that we should vote for a Tory deal. The Tories are the party of the billionaire class. They've been negotiating in favour of the billionaire class, and this is a billionaire's deal. So Labour should have nothing to do with it at all. I think the problem that people like Brendan have made over this whole debate is they think there is some sort of abstract national interest, that we're all in it together, and we're not all in it together. And you end up with Labour MPs ending up speaking on platforms with Nigel Farage in favour of the Leave Now event and so on. It was a disaster. You also have to approach this with some sort of principles. Simply because some layers of workers supported leave is not a reason for supporting leave. Some layers of workers might support a war at a particular time, or might support the restoration of hanging. Does that mean that we as socialists give up our principles and say, actually, because some workers hold this view, I will now hold that view? Again, I think you have to approach this from the point of view of principles rather than particular opinion polls. And I think that, no, I don't think this deal will offer anything to working people at all. We've got to remember who led the Brexit campaign. It wasn't the left. It was the most hard right elements of Tory and beyond Tory right-wing politics. They're in the driving seat on all this. It will be used to lower standards. It will be used to lower workers' standards. It will be used to lower environmental standards. It will be used to lower consumer rights standards. That's the agenda that we now face in Britain. And I say that as no ally or friend of the EU at all. The mistake that some on the left made is not realising that in the real world, there was no Lexit on offer. There was simply a hard right Tory Brexit on offer. And that's what we now face. It is going to be a disaster. And the idea that Labour should vote for it is utterly ludicrous in my point of view. Labour is supposed to be the opposition. The Tories are the party of the millionaires and the billionaires, and we should be opposing them. I think there is a tactical debate about whether Labour should abstain. Personally, I think I would probably vote against, but I would certainly, if I was in Parliament, not be voting for a Tory deal driven through by the millionaires who run the Tory party. I think the whole thing is a disaster, and it's going to be a disaster that unfolds over the next years, and we will see the loss of jobs, we will see further attempts to drive down wages, further deregulation. That's what this Brexit is going to deliver for people. It is going to be an utter disaster. Sorry, I can't hear you. Oh, are you muted?
Who's muted me?
You muted yourself.
No, I don't. I'm not. Someone else has muted me. But anyway, I'm not muted now. Thank you very much, Matt. No, but what I am sort of interested in what this deal represents for what you call the Lexit argument. I mean, from what I've read, it doesn't mean that Labour can start renationalising industries with this deal anyway.
Not at all.
So the idea we can take back control and start investing in industry isn't true with this particular deal. And I'm going to introduce Ian Byrne, who will be voting on this on Wednesday. Are you there, Ian?
Yeah, me, Crispin, yeah.
Now, like other people have said, it's impossible to have read the whole report. So obviously you're going to read more into it. But what you've read, what do you think of the deal, and how it will impact people's on food poverty? Because obviously you've been involved in that, and price rises and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I think the
nationalisation issue.
Well, I think as Matt outlined there, his analysis was fantastic. delving into exactly where we are. And, you know, for me, regardless of what we do as a party, the deal is going to go through. So where are we in the 2nd of January? That's my interest. So I think Brexit's been so divisive to the working class and the country at large. So for me, I think as a Labour Party and as a Labour MP, we've got to work on uniting now and challenging what we're actually going to, what is actually going to come from the decision to leave the EU. And I think that's where my mindset is at the moment, Crispin, is what are we going to do to challenge, as Matt says, the job losses, the erosion of rights. You know, we're going to, this is a deal that's been led by the Tories. It's been envisaged in 2016 by the Tories. It's been driven through the country. They've now got what they wanted. So what are we going to do as a class and as a country to hold these to account? Because there's no longer any opportunity for them to blame the EU. It's at their doorstep now. So for me, the whole movements and the country at large really has got to unite. And we've got to challenge the evils of inequality, because that's what's ravaging my community at the moment and communities across our country. So for me, that's my call today, is this deal's going to go through regardless of what we do as a Labour Party. They've got an 80+ majority. They're going to drive this through. What are we going to do on the 2nd of January as a class, as a movement, as a Labour Party to challenge the impact of what this is going to have on our communities? Because as Matt rightly said, this has been brokered by millionaires for billionaires. So what are we going to do as a country and as a movement to challenge what we're going to face? And that's that'll be my question posed today.
Thank you for coming on, Ian. I'm going to speak now to somebody who was very active in the Remain campaign and has been on the show a couple of times. Steve Cowan, are you there?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Steve. Now, have you read the whole report?
I've read some of it. I haven't read the whole thing. I don't think even the people who've written it have read it after they've written it. You know, the British haven't.
What do you think about what you have read of it? What impact will it have on the country? And what do you think Labour's position should be on it in this vote on Wednesday?
Look, I think often what we end up doing in politics is talking very short term. You know, but if we're just coming to the end of the first year of a new decade. If we go back 10 years, then none of us would have thought we'd be here as a country. None of us have thought that Labour would be out of office for 10 years, and none of us would have thought the Tories have messed up the country quite so much as they have. And what Pamela Fitzpatrick said was right. What we've seen with bad government, going for many different reasons, is a mistrust in politics. And if you look at how that plays out in America, there's a mistrust in Washington, DC. In France, there's a mistrust in Paris. In Britain, there's a mistrust of stuff that comes out of London and Westminster. And actually in Britain, that was played out quite well in a referendum of a mistrust of Brussels and a mistrust of the EU. And at a time when the world has got a lot more complicated than it was when I was a kid in the 1970s. You know, what we now face, looking forward to the 22nd century, is 70 years of globalization and automation, which would be huge threats to working class people, and also an awful lot of middle class jobs like lawyers and accountants that were previously done by people who'd gone to university and can now be done by an algorithm. So within all of that, there's people looking for simplistic answers, and one of those simplistic answers was Brexit. And as Matt said earlier, you know, 10 years ago, Brexit was the brainchild of a small bunch of mad people in the Tory party. The same people, by the way, because the Tory party is always, like all big parties, be an alliance of different groups. The same people who were the people who supported Pinochet, who were Chicago boys economics, where they believe that what you need is rampant free market economics, and that's how a society will strengthen. And their first experiment was in Chile. These are the same arguments now for where Britain goes next. And they're in charge. They've been in charge for 10 years, and they've taken charge of the Tory party completely. And that's what our country faces. So what you've seen is a sort of dichotomy, really, of a whole bunch of people in large parts of the north, where I'm from originally, looking for hope since Thatcher basically killed our industrial base, and looking for a new way forward at a time when that's got tougher. and the far right has quite cleverly managed to manipulate that into being anti-EU. And quite frankly, the fishing industry matters diddly squat. It's important to people in the fishing industry, but from the economy point of view, it's less than 1% of the economy. It's a sort of red herring in the deal. Now you look at the deal we've got, and we were promised exactly the same, if you remember. We'd have exactly the same trade deal, we just wouldn't have to take EU laws. Well, I used to charge quite a lot of money to teach people negotiation before I did this job. And the most basic principle of negotiation is you cannot negotiate. It's the most basic principle if the balance of power, the perceived balance of power, is not seen as equal. And what that means in simplistic terms is, are the things the other person can do to hurt you, and are the things the other person can do to reward you? And there's a sort of gameplay. Anyone knows that who's ever bought or sold a car, you know, there's a gameplay when you come to, you know, how much do they want it, how much do I need to sell it, and all of that type of stuff. The basic rule of the world works on that basis. So if you're a small African country, it's quite hard negotiating with the United States or with China or the EU. And if you're the EU, your negotiations basically happen with those other big power blocks. And so the deal that they've done with the British is a joke. I mean, we should vote for it for reasons I'll come on to, but essentially there's no service industries. So since Faction messed up our country, we are now a service industry based economy. And what with automation, we're likely to continue being like that for quite some time. There's no deal on service industries. There is deals on frictionless trade of a sort on food, but the paperwork means that, and the extra cost that will mean, but a huge extra cost on farming and fish. Given we're a country who don't eat fish, mostly, we sell most of our fish to the European Union, then that will go in at a tariff. That will go in with friction on the trade. There's rules of origin yet to be decided. Zero customs formalities yet to be decided. Fisheries agreement not really decided. And then in terms of removing you look at the citizens and they go on holiday to Benidorm. Well, they won't be able to take their pets. They won't necessarily get roaming charges. This is just a dreadful deal. And it's a dreadful deal, mostly precipitated by people who are on the far right, who imagine Britain's future to be Singapore on Thames, with a sort of Downton Abbey eyes, with luxury stately homes built for the richest people, all the people who own the multi-million-pound yachts in the south of France. You can see it each summer. We'll all want big mansions, and people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, you know, he thinks the future of work for working people is probably something that looks a bit like the 18th and 19th century. So I think that's the problem. Can the Labour Party therefore find a way back? Because there are people who mistrust us across whole swathes of what we want called our base, because they've been looking for people to blame. They blame the EU, they blame London, they blame, quite rightly, a whole bunch of people who haven't been willing to make the necessary changes to bring wealth to them. Where do we go from here? All I know is Brexit isn't done. It's going to keep going for a very long time, because we've got the world's biggest trading bloc 20 miles off our coast, and they're going to be telling us what to do and how high to jump and quite a lot of things for a very long time. And that's a bad position for our country. So I think you then say, well, what's the politics to play? Well, I don't know. We have to rim the red wall back. So I don't think we want to fall into Boris Johnson's trap and allow him to say, we once again, Keir Starmer was against Brexit. You know, I think he has to vote for it and say, we gave you it, but they also have to criticise it. So the only options really were vote for it or abstain, and probably voting for it minimises the attack amongst our red wall base, where for lots of reasons, we've lost them over the last 30 years, really. For lots of reasons we've lost them, but they will want, you know, we will need to do that, I think, for electoral reasons.
But do you not think that if it becomes a disaster, which you probably forecast it will be, if we own it, then we can't really argue against it afterwards?
You know, I think it's a flip of a coin. Which one do you do? Do you abstain and say we're not going to get in your way, or do you vote for it and say we think it's bad, but we think it's better than a no deal? I mean, it's a flip of a coin decision. I think he's gone for the latter, and he's got better understanding. And I know for a fact, because I'm quite friendly with one of his people. I know for a fact they've been polling massively in the red wall seats to see how people feel about the Labour Party, and you know, they will have listened very much to what people say. So I would just go with that.
All right. So, but that doesn't sound. I mean, for me, that doesn't sound particularly principled. It's about how we're going to get how it affects our votes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, great to see you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for explaining lots of other issues that we hadn't heard already. And I'm going to speak to Nina, who's a member of Labour International. So she's actually a Labour member in Spain. I'd like to hear what Nina thinks about this. Nina, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah. So have you? I'm asking everyone if you had a chance to read it all, but no one has. But what do you get from what you have read of the deal?
To be honest, I've been more concerned by the transition agreement, because everything about my life was settled in that. And as long as the agreement goes through, I continue to use the Spanish health service, my driving license, everything else. On a personal level, and I'm not speaking for Labour International, I see that Jerry Lerner's here, and actually he's much more involved in the running of Labour International than I am. Right. On a personal level, I've been living here since 2003. And in 2004, we had a President Zapatero and a socialist government that changed life in Spain hugely in terms of making it more equal, you know, for women, for gay people, all sorts of social things. And then in 2008, the European Commission just forced Zapatero to bring in the most terrible austerity. And of course, it completely lost all faith in a socialist government. And in 2010, we had the most right-wing Partido Popular government ever, which is like in Britain with the Tories, destroyed the social services. And now we have a coalition trying to put it back. So I'm trying to say that my feelings about the European Commission and what they did in Spain and in Greece and to some extent in Italy have made me very cynical about it. I voted Remain. I've lost my vote now, but I've had grave doubt since. And you were talking about the Morning Star, but I just looked online, and the Morning Star editorial this morning is saying what happened to the Labour policy of negotiating a Brexit, you know, from an anti-capitalist, anti-monopoly kind of point of view. And if you remember, in 2017, both Corbyn and McDonald were going over to Europe and were negotiating with the people in the European Commission, because it really looked at the time as if there was a possibility of having a left-wing coalition government. I don't think in any way could justify voting for this deal. Myself, I think Labour would have no integrity left if it does that. But speaking in Spain, it's difficult for me to say because I'm very privileged. You know, I have a pension, I have a state civil service and a state pension from Britain. So I'm so much more secure than my own daughter, for instance, who lives here and works freelance, and she's very concerned about what happens. She's maybe thinking of taking Spanish nationality. So it's a mess. And I think, from my point of view, I think Labour should vote against the deal or give people free vote, and then look back and see how we got to here, and how we can reform some kind of left-wing proper relationship with Europe, with America, with everywhere. We can't just go on following behind the worst Tory government in 100 years probably, and yet Starmer's kind of basically going along with it. And I feel ashamed of that. And I must say my Spanish friends, my French friends, my German friends here just cannot believe that Britain is in the state it's in. Right. So that's it. But this is just my personal, it's not about, Labour International.
Well, thank you for sharing your views on this. In Spain, is it warm down there?
It's lovely. It's a beautiful sunshine. So, that does make life a little bit easier when you can have a nice garden. So, yeah.
It's a shame we can't all be down there. It's sunny. Now, I'm going to bring in Lloyd, Russell-Moyle, who's obviously going to vote on this as well on Wednesday. It's Wednesday, isn't it, Lloyd?
Yes, on the 30th.
Oh, hold on. Sorry.
Yes. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Sorry, I muted you by mistake. So what do you think about? I believe you haven't made up your mind how you'll be voting. Is that right?
I'm in a real quandary about it. And my quandary is putting aside all the Brexit arguments one way or another. You know, I agree generally with Matt and Stephen on this. You know, the EU wasn't a socialist utopia, but neither is the British state. And compared to the British state, it often, you know, kind of came out slightly better just because we were able to leverage other socialists from Europe at different points to get things that were needed. But it did awful things just like the British state continues to do awful things. But that to some extent is an argument of Brexit that's gone. You know, we lost that argument after we lost the 2019 election. I have a slightly different analysis of why we lost that. I actually think we dithered in our EU Brexit policy. Can you remember the anguish about whether we would support a customs union, whether it was the customs union or a customs union, a single market and the single market? Dither all the way. And who was leading on that? Well, Keir Starmer. So I don't think actually it was the end result that was the problem of our Brexit policy. I think the problem with our Brexit policy is we never showed any leadership. You know, it was the one area we showed no leadership for, and then everyone said, oh, well, God, we can't trust you because you've never really shown us what you wanted. But putting that aside, we lost that because of those things, and we are where we are now. So the question in front of us is, do we want no deal or do we want this deal? We're not in position to be in government now at the moment. And does this deal prevent us from negotiating things additionally, to deepening our cooperation, to reconsidering things when Labour gets in? So far, I don't think it does prevent us from doing a lot of those things, although there might be some generational loss that, you know, some students won't be able to take part in Erasmus, for example, for a bit. And actually, it's not the students bit that's important, it's the youth bit. The youth bit costs a quarter of Erasmus, of the total Erasmus funding. 3/4 goes to students, a quarter goes to underprivileged young people in schools and apprenticeships. But actually the number of young people that take part in the youth programme, which only costs a quarter, is the same number as all the students, you know, so it's much cheaper, and it actually includes greater diversity. The government will not replicate the youth part, but they're going to replicate the student part. So they're replicating the bit that, yes, is important, but actually helps the university students that generally are more privileged than apprenticeship students, for example. But you know, putting all those things aside, they are temporal problems. They're not permanent problems. My view is that voting against this deal does line you up in a awful situation of walking through the lobbies with some of the most crazy Brexiteers who wanted no deal. And no deal is the worst option in my view, because it would cause real problems that we've seen already with the lorry parks in kind of Kent. So my view is it's only responsible to either vote for it or abstain. Now, the problem is I want to abstain. But I wrote an article 3 weeks ago saying Keir Starmer has an abstention problem, that he loves abstaining and not making his mind up. And so I am in a quandary on a personal level about how do I then break the whip by abstaining when I've written an article saying, my God, this man continues to abstain. So that's where I am at the moment. And I think, is it better to... I'm not in Keir's shadow cabinet, by the way. Is it better that we just vote for it and then suffer the consequences of maybe having the backlash? Now, or is it better that we abstain and suffer the consequences of having the backlash there, where people say, God, you're constantly abstaining, you're not fit for government because you can't make your mind up. Now, the problem with the polls that the party have done is that no poll can predict what people will think in 4 years' time. So it's a snapshot of now, and it's a snapshot of now where the Tories are leading the narrative, and there's a kind of victory narrative happening, which we know for sure will not be the case in 4 years' time. What we do know, however, is before 4 years, next year, we have got elections in London, Scotland, and Wales, and a lot of the metropolitan areas, you know, Bristol mayoral areas, some of the other Birmingham mayoral areas. What I'm more interested in how it plays out there. Now, this plays out badly in Scotland if we vote for it. And we do need to win some seats back in Scotland. And this doesn't play particularly well in Wales either way. You know, kind of Wales was screwed both ways. In Bristol area, it doesn't play well if we vote for, but in Birmingham area, it doesn't play well if we abstain. So again, we are in a real quandary. So that's where I am at the moment. What I would say, briefly finish off on the deal itself. The deal is, of course, weak. It doesn't include things like Erasmus. It doesn't include access for road hauliers to freely travel across the border, for example. So all this kind of frictionless that Stephen was talking about. And so it is very weak. I wouldn't call it a bad deal, but it's an extremely weak deal. However, I want to point out one thing that I think is quite interesting. I sit on the trade committee, and we have overview of all the other trade deals apart from the EU one, which is the EU committee, Brexit committee. All trade committees, all trade deals, the deal we signed with Japan prevents us from renationalising Royal Mail, for example. You know, kind of so all trade deals that we're signing at the moment bind us in with very little democratic oversight. So it's a real problem. Yeah. This deal actually has an interesting clause in. It says, and Brendan was asking about the reciprocity of the disputes mechanism. It does say all mechanisms are fully reciprocal and equally available to both parties. Now, I've got to see the wording of that, but that's the headline that it gives. But it also says, in the event of serious economic, sectoral or social or environmental difficulties, either can take unilateral measurements. Well, actually, that to me is almost a clause that stops people reducing workers' rights and actually puts the pressure up to increase them. That's the first time I've ever seen that in a trade deal, that particular line. It's something that I've called for. For example, I think in trade with India, with China particularly, where they're using slave labour in the Uyghur Muslim, the Uyghur camps where the Uyghur Muslims are forced, and then they're selling those goods cheaply to Britain. I think Britain should be putting an additional tariff on those goods because they are being produced in concentration camps, you know, kind of, and there should be a punishment for that. This line here, if that was put into other trade arrangements, and even that we go and negotiate with us and the EU that this kind of line could be acceptable in WTO arrangements, and WTO is a constant negotiation discussion, that would actually be a very positive thing for workers' rights. So yes, there's a lot of rubbish in here. There is one line that I've managed to pull out that's positive. I think that's probably the only line in the whole thing. And so I'm in a real quandary about what we then do in terms of moving forward. Anyway, sorry, that's a bit rambly, but hopefully it gives you a bit of an understanding of the dilemma.
I think that sounds like the deal sounds a bit rambly as well, really. So the whole thing's a bit of a confusion to lots of people. But I think I've learned quite a bit from this discussion. I'm sorry that there are people who want to speak, but we haven't really got any time. We will continue to talk about this. So Steve, I can see you've put your hand up. We'll bring you in for another show later on. Thank you everyone for getting up so early and not eating turkey during the show and making it not unpleasant for everyone else to watch. So now we will be moving to something light-hearted after Brexit. What do you think about that? Not very keen on it, are you? Right. Well, we've got 3 comedians who've been in lockdown who are now all in tier 4, not getting any work, so they're desperate to make people laugh. Maybe you Brexit and Remainer people will be up for it. Are you there, Don?
Yes, I am.
Have you got any good Brexit jokes?
Well, I've got one thing. I was a bit sceptical of the lockdown, and the weird thing is, the irony is that the Brexit Party have now renamed themselves Reform UK an anti-lockdown party. The irony, or the weird thing is, they want to lift restrictions unless it's free movement across Europe. So that's the truth. And also, as I said this a couple of weeks ago, single Brexiters, after the deal is negotiated, now can find love on a website called No More Fish.
Right, good one. Patrick in.
Oh,
Patrick in Chiswick. Are you? You look like you've just got up. You look like the sun's just.
It is so sunny here, Crispin. As soon as you mentioned Brexit, the sun came out. The sun's like, what is happening? The sun's like, oh my god! It literally is the last day of sunshine before January the 31st, because the sun then has to go back to Europe. It said it's leaving. It's leaving Britain. So I'm just going to use as many sunshine hours as I can, and I'm going to try and store it. It's quite. I didn't realise how sunny it is. That is quite a bad spot. Do I look all right?
But you're used to having a bright light in your face when you go on stage, aren't you?
Yeah, but this looks like interrogation. It looks like, what do you do with the money? I was just trying to get to Colombia, doesn't it?
Now, Suzy, are you there?
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm all right. We're in Plymouth, so still tier 2. But we're thinking that we might go in lockdown in January. So we're just waiting to hear. So we're kind of prepared for it. But I got this for Christmas, so this will see me through the month. Hooray! 60 years Coronation Street. That'll see me through the month. So hopefully I'm not going to, because I've got tickets for the pantomime on the 3rd of January. So you know, Les Dennis is in it, so I can't. I've already been let down by Jason Donovan this year. I can't be let down by Les Dennis as well. So hopefully that will go ahead. But I am thinking of you all in tier 4.
Now I've got a story in the papers for you three. It says that people are planning for the New Year's Eve celebrations in their own room and how they're going to do 2021. Seeing 2021. Have you got any plans for that?
Me?
Yeah, well, Suzy, have you got any plans for the
New Year's? For me, the most depressing night of the year. So I like to pretend it's not happening, and pretend to just. I watch something escapism on the telly. I mean, this year the soaps. I'll do my soaps bingo card, which is someone will say this is the best Christmas ever, and then something bad happens. A secret always gets revealed, an affair gets revealed. I'll be doing my soaps bingo card, and I've got the New Year Take a Break magazine. I don't have it with me now, but do you remember the Christmas one, which was full of Christmas cheer? This one, my favourite headline is "Old Lang Swine." So someone caught their partner cheating at every year. So I'll be reading that. I'll be reading my Corrie book. I'll be pretending it's not happening, but I will be secretly wishing that 2021 is much better for everyone. But does anybody else get depressed at New Year? It's just such a big expectation to have fun and be happy, and I can't cope. I'm a comedian. We're all miserable.
But we've had such a good year this year so far. That we don't want to leave this year, do we? But how about you, Patrick? Are you going to be doing some dancing, and you're going to?
Yeah, I mean, look, Crispin, we've literally. They were saying they said this year, look, party like it's 2021 from the comfort of your own home. We have all literally been partying at our home for the last 9 months. What I'm going to do on New Year's Eve, and you're all welcome to come. I'm going to send a big minibus out. We're going to collect everyone, and I'm going to break into our local Flares nightclub. And I'm going to literally, Crispin, you can go on the decks. You can do a bit of DJing. Don and Suzy can do a bit of backing dancing. We'll get Rob can do some live music. Get Alice and Libby. Get everyone else. Mark will probably do some of his disco dancing on stage. And then everyone else can be like security. And we'll just go mental. Because the thing is, these nightclubs have not been used for 9 months. I mean, it's appalling at a time of year like this. And I think, look, the thing is, we've got to remember a lot of people do have New Year's Eve at home. I know loads of people who always like to have it home, and I think it's fantastic. I think the only difference this year will be that, stroke of midnight, instead of like people hugging or kissing, everyone will be like putting hand sanitizers around the lips and then kissing each other. And then instead of saying Happy New Year, at midnight, no one's going to say Happy New Year. Everyone's going to go, what tier are you in? Has it moved yet? It's the stroke of midnight, it's the 1st of Jan. So I think it will be different, but I think we just got to embrace it. And if we do have to have it at home, I think it'd be great, because there's like this 24-hour rave telethon thing, and it's brilliant. I have never had a rave. I used to go to like these all-nighters when I was in Liverpool when I was younger, but I never took drugs. But what will be great is this year, I might get into a bubble, with like a couple of aunties, uncles, get your granddad, and just have a rave at home. And I've never had a rave where I've been trying to buy pills off me auntie. So it'd be actually quite nice. So I think that'd be quite good. And also, the only problem with having New Year's Eve at home, this is the biggest problem, is that literally after midnight, all of us will have to go outside of our front door and stand for 2 hours in the cold, pretending to wait for a taxi to take us home again. So that's the only downside of it. But apart from that, it should be great.
And Don, are you planning anything at home?
Well, no. Well, I'd like to say to Patrick, you can't have a DJ during New Year's. No mixing.
Hey!
But for the New Year's, I'm going to be the opposite of Suzy. I'm going to be really happy, and I'm going to listen to my favourite band of all time.
Oh, the Smiths. Is that
I'm going to be listening to them.
Do they cheer you up, the Smiths?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh right, okay.
I'll be listening to Heaven Knows I'm Miserable now.
Well, that's good. Right, we'll all rave with you, Don, with the Smiths, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, look, we're going to do a show on the 30th of December, which is a review of the year. So we're going to go through all the events that have happened in the past year politically and some of the comedy moments, gold. And if you'd like to come along on that would be great. 7:30 till.
Oh yes, but it's been a good year for Coronation Street, so I've got plenty to talk about. Lots of stuff.
Okay, we'll do that next week then.
And my diets, on and off my diets. I can do like a diary of my diet starting on a Monday, finishing on a Wednesday.
Oh,
so
brilliant.
yeah, that's my year.
Well, I'll do Crossroads.
I'll try and find.
I'm going to do Crossroads for the year.
I'll try and find that clip of you down at the Lido with Big
Willie.
We've got lots of footage from the year, so we'll do that. And Rob is here. Are you there, Rob? Yeah, Rob.
Hello. Yeah.
He's got a nice hoodie on there.
Yeah.
So will you be up will you up for the Wednesday review of the year? We'll do a review of the year. Maybe you could do a song about 2020 and what joy we had.
I've just written one actually.
Have you? Oh, right. Okay, so thank you, Don, Suzy, and Patrick for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks. Cheers.
And we'll see you on Wednesday. And Rob, what have you haven't written a song for today, have you?
I have, yeah, and it's sort of well, anyway, here it is. It's sort of possibly should have written it for next Wednesday, but yeah.
Oh, it's for the Brexit deal.
Yeah, it's a meditation on Brexit and why. What awful. Anyway, here we go. Our leaders are stupid. Our leaders are vain. They steer us into icebergs time and again. And our leaders have lifeboats, so they'll be okay. And they'll live to tell journalists how they save the day. Unhappy old year. Unhappy old year. And our leaders get statues when they die in their beds. We might get a footnote, the glorious dead. And our kids go to schools where they learn not to learn, how they fiddled their taxes while our hospitals burned. Unhappy new old year. Unhappy old year. Unhappy old year. Unhappy old year. So let's vote for King Herod. He knows how things work. You fuck it all up, then you just say Dunkirk, spirit. So carry on Christmas, carry on lying, and in the COVID wards we carry on dying. Unhappy old year. Unhappy old year. Unhappy old year. Unhappy old year. So where are the righteous? Where are the true? Looks like it's down to me and you. Down to me and you.
That was quite sad, that one.
Sad mode today, yeah.
But it looked like it took it out on you. That the song actually just sunk. But are you feeling down about the year? Has it been okay, the year at all? I mean,
you know, I've written a lot of songs. Thank you very much for the opportunity. But I just think it's, you know, it is that poison chalice, isn't it? There's God, no one wants to see a hard Brexit, and now we have to choose to vote for a naff Brexit. Maybe there's still arguments that we don't want to go into, that actually the people's vote was kind of not really an overwhelming majority to leave anyway, and so it's not really a people's vote, and it's all the fault of the internal divisions within the Tory party, and the hard right have managed to get hold of the narrative, and we're not really able to oppose it. And yeah, this is not, this has never been a socialist utopia, and it's just like, we, after all that great expectation we had with Corbyn and the socialist leadership, it's been a difficult year. And I just turned 65, and I'm feeling really pissed off about that as well. So that doesn't help.
No, you're not 65.
65 on Christmas Day. And you know what? Christmas Day, 570 people died in hospital. And it just like, they're just a footnote. 570 families lost people they loved over on Christmas Day. Footnote. And I look at the Times this morning and about Boris, and it's celebrating his madman deal. And I'm so ashamed of this fucking country. And if I could, I would move somewhere else. I can't. I'm stuck here with this awful country, in this awful little plague ship. So apart from that, I'm all right.
Well, I mean, I think that we all have to, in time, we always have bad times. We have really bad times, and we have really, really bad times. But they do come back up again. We have to go to a low sometimes to get to enjoy something that isn't as bad. I mean, I think we'll find a way through this. Maybe not this next year, but the one after, or whatever. If you keep plugging away. So thank you for writing that song and expressing yourself so eloquently. What do you think we can rally the troops for the end of the show? Have you got it in you?
Yeah. What do you want? Red flag?
Oh, the red flag is a good end. I think everyone who feels like they want to, they can put their fist in the air and look really angry.
The people's flag is deepest red. It's shrouded off down martyr dead, and ere their limbs grew stiff and cold, their heart's blood dyed its every fold. So raise the scarlet standard high, beneath its shades we live and die. Though cowards flinch and traitors sneer, we keep the red flag flying here. It waved above our infant might, when all ahead seemed dark as night. It's witnessed many a deed and vow, we shall not change its colour now. So raise the scarlet standard high, beneath its shade we live and die. Though cowards flinch and traitors sneer, we keep the red flag flying here. It well recalls our triumphs past, and gives us hope of peace at last. This banner bright, this symbol plain, of human rights and humanity's gain. So raise the scarlet standard high, beneath its shade we live and die. Though cowards flinch and traitors sneer, we keep the red flag flying here. So raise the the scarlet standard high, beneath its shade we live and die. Though cowards flinch and traitors sneer, we keep the red flag flying here.